Hi everybody, this is Early Medieval Embroidery and I'm Alexandra Makin, and it's the next instalment of the Bayeux Tapestry Recreation Project. Yes, I know you can't believe it, nor can I, but we've finally made it to this one. So in this video we are talking about transferring the design, which is all in bits, the design, onto, you can tell I'm doing this. I'm not an actor, that would have been slicker otherwise. But onto the ground fabric. Now, at the end of the last video, I had lots of people watching and commenting. Thank you so much, I appreciate that. And one of the comments that quite a few people, questions really, were asking was, why didn't you just attach each side of the separately? Why did I go all the way around? And when I read those comments, I just thought, oh duh, yes, why didn't I do that? That is so obvious. And I think the only reason I can think of really is the fact that I was so focused on getting it done, using the right materials, and thinking about it from that more research side rather than practical side, that I didn't even consider that. So thank you everybody for that comment, those questions. It's actually made me think about these things a bit more. So moving on to today. So we're going to be talking and doing the transfer of the design onto the linen. And we don't know basically how it was done. We know that the design was most likely drawn out onto the ground fabric because of the complex nature of what's being stitched and its size. And that people have always spoken about it being transferred onto the ground fabric. We don't really have any evidence of a line drawing on the fabric because over the centuries it's been cleaned, including washing, which has meant that any under drawing has disappeared. The lines that you can see are from the 19th century restoration work that took place by embroiderers based in Bayeux, and that's these are kind of brownish red lines that you can see nowadays. So this is a really intriguing part of the process really. We know that manuscript illuminators, and this is particularly true for the Lindisfarne Gospels, would use what we call the prick and pounce method, and that's what embroiderers use today, have done really for a long time. It's how I was trained to transfer designs over on my apprenticeship at the Royal School of Needlework. And you will know, if you've seen the video of me transferring the design for the Cuthbert Recreation Project, that I did experiment with that for that project. If you've not seen that video, I'll pop the link for it down below and you can have a look at it. You'll also know from I don't really like this method. It's one of the things I don't like about doing embroidery, and there's various reasons for that. Also found that when I was using that method to transfer the Cuthbert design over, because we were using vellum, not modern tracing paper and things like this, that it caused a number of difficulties. So there's that side of things to think about. And also with the Bayeux Tapestry, there's its size. So the prick and pounce method would be fine if you're making a small piece, such as the individual figures on a stole or maniple, that kind of thing. But here we're talking meters and meters of embroidery. And so really the vellum, which would be the nearest thing to the modern tracing paper we use to transfer the design over, it would have been too expensive, and it would have taken a lot of animals to create enough usable parchment. So that got me thinking, well, okay, how did people do this? How did they transfer the design over? So not many people have researched this. One of the great things about this project, but there has been one article in the fantastic journal Medieval Clothing and Textiles in volume 16. I'm not plugging it, I'm just saying. By Maggie, Kneen and Gale, Owen-Crocker. Maggie Kneen is an illustrator, and Gale, Owen-Crocker is, of course, that famous researcher who has worked a lot on the Bayeux Tapestry. And they investigated the use of templates for transferring over designs, and you can see from the illustrations that their ideas were about using basic shapes in different sizes that could then be used to create the different elements that you see across the hanging. I think there's a lot to be taken from this. So of course then that got me thinking, wow, what would you use for a template? Of course, it didn't have cardboard, and I was thinking, oh, maybe it would have to be something that is easy to create and not too expensive, and something that would be around and easy to get your hands on. So in my head, I was thinking of perhaps thin pieces of wood, but I'm not an expert on this sort of thing. So I contacted Adam, who is, you may know more as Blue Axe. I've got to check that, sorry if that's wrong. But he is, if you know of him, he is an amazing archaeologist, but also maker of replica early medieval products, all sorts of different products. He's on Twitter, or X as it's now called, and Instagram. So I'll post links to his sites down below, and you can see his fabulous work. But I thought he's the guy to go to. So we've had a conversation, and I was explaining the project and transferring the design and templates, and he interestingly said, well, no, wood actually, what you're talking about, wood would have been quite difficult to come by in that sense, because it would need a lot of working, and to get it to the state where you could use it, and that actually wood was being used for architecture, etc., etc., and there wouldn't necessarily have been the leftover bits that you need in order to make templates. It would be more slithers, etc. So he suggested that leather, which of course is something I hadn't even considered, but it's obvious when you think about it. The populations of the early medieval British Isles used leather for so many things that we wouldn't use them today. So this was obviously a material that was available for people to use quite easily and in abundance. Maybe that's the wrong word, but you know what I'm trying to say. He also suggested, quite surprisingly, that offcuts of vellum might have been fairly easy to get hold of as well, and so offcuts of vellum may have been used for making templates, and that I was really quite surprised about actually. But so what I've done is I ordered, this was an exciting parcel when it arrived, these offcuts of different types of leather, and you can see they're different thicknesses, textures, and I'm going to experiment with these. We're going to cut these into different shapes and use these to try and see how that works. I've also actually got some vellum, so we'll cut some vellum up and we'll use those as templates as well. See whether one works better than the other or not at all. So one of the main points in Gale and Maggie's article is that the templates were set shapes and sizes, and they could be transferred across to produce the different elements throughout the tapestry, which yeah, sounds great. And I thought, yes, this is what we're going to do. However, when I was redrawing this out, you'll see that since the last video, the lines are now darker, and I'll explain why in a minute. But when I was drawing this out, I realised that there aren't actually that many repeating shapes with it, or elements within the design that we've put together for the projects. I should have perhaps done some more forward thinking on this and not just gone for aesthetic value. However, I think what we can do is cut out some of the shapes and use them maybe just once, or for the two end bars we'll be able to turn them around and use them more than once. So it's not perhaps going to be used in exactly the same way as they may have been done originally, but we'll give it a go. So one final thing before we move on to the practical. As I said, I've gone over the blinds to make them darker, and I know they're a lot thicker than perhaps they would have been originally, but that's because when I put this underneath the ground fabric, originally it didn't show through, whereas now, we'll see if I can get this to work a little bit. Oh, very well, here we go. Whereas now you can see that the lines are showing through the fabric. And the reason I wanted to do that was because obviously I've got this set design that's got to be worked out, drawn out accurately within my frame, and so I want the design underneath the fabric, so I know where to place my templates as I'm tracing the design out. That also gives me the option as well of if we're finding the templates difficult or things aren't quite working out, I can do it freehand over the top. Talking about freehand, just one final thing. When I was drawing over the fainter lines, so the shapes and the movement and the way they sit actually got me thinking about how you can imagine people who were practiced at drawing and this sort of thing actually could have done some of these things freehand as well. Your arm movement, your hand movements works quite well with these shapes. However, there are a couple of caveats that I was swishing the paper around as I was doing it, and I had different working conditions, but I just got those thought processes going as well. And I suppose one of the other things is, did the original person draw this out perfectly? And if so, if it was being copied, or if not, and it was being copied, was the person transferring the design onto the fabric, if it was someone different, tempted to alter it a little bit, put their own individuality on, or make it perfect? I suppose the example here is that you will see that I've drawn the tower as it appears on the tapestry, and because of the way the original scene has been worked, there's a lot more, there are figures here on the original scene, and because there's a lot more stitching there, it's pulled some of these this tower that way, and then the stitching on this side has pulled the bottom bit the other way, creating this wonky effect. I quite like it, but my husband keeps saying you should be straightening it up, and to be honest with you, I didn't actually think about it until it was too late, but that is a point, so I don't know, maybe not. So we left a couple of days ago when I said I was going to prep everything ready for the transferring the design onto the fabric, and I have done that. So I've tried to use two different types of leather. We've got this flexible, thinner leather here, this slightly thicker, less malleable leather, and then when I was tracing out some of the shapes on the leather for the templates, I realised that the smaller shapes that I was using wouldn't really work for that. And so this is a little bit of vellum that I've got. So I've got a roll of vellum, and I've traced some of the small shapes because you see a bit here out on this. So I was thinking, should I record this process? And then I thought, well, I'm not actually doing it 100% accurately with experimental archaeology, so I haven't. Just getting all these little templates out for you. So what you'll see is we've got some of the shapes cut out in the more pliable leather here, and I've basically taken them from the tower. So this is the doorway, so we'll try using that to draw around. This is the large roof at the top, which we'll use, and then this little window here actually covers the 2 windows at the top that are the same size, so we'll have a go with those. And then with the vellum, I've got the smaller roof, which is down here. The vellum worries me slightly. I don't know why, it just does. And then this teeny tiny window, which we'll use further down. And then I thought, well, we should try the thicker leather as well. So I've just done one swirl curl from the outside edge, and we're going to experiment with that too. So as I said in the introduction, while this may seem a bit odd, we're working on the idea that Maggie, Kneen and Gale, Owen-Crocker were talking about in their article about the use of templates, and therefore that would give you some consistency across that 65+ metre hanging. So as you can see, I've learned from last time when I was lacing up on the floor. We've now got a table, which is much better. And you can see that what we've done is I've laid out the design underneath the fabric, and you can see that it actually shows through quite well. And I want to talk to my weaver at some point, because I want to get her opinion on whether this would have been how the original linen looked, so you could see a pattern through it, or if the linen was on the original Bayeux Tapestry was more like you see it today. The reason I'm questioning that, or not questioning, I'm wondering about it, is because the Bayeux Tapestry has been cleaned and washed over the centuries, and I'm wondering if that's altered the fabric density. So that's one point, but we're going to use that to trace through the design. We've got these templates to experiment with here. And I know in the introduction I was talking about the prick and pounce method, which people use a lot, and you can see that on the Cuthbert piece. I'll put the link to the video down below, as I said before, but we're not going to use that here. We're just going to use this tracing element. So what dyes are we using? Well, as we're trying to be authentic as much as possible, we're actually using natural dyes. So this is a powdered form of oak. So oak gall was used quite a lot for different things in the early medieval period. So this is our version of that. For transferring the pigment onto the fabric, I'm actually using modern paintbrushes, but they're squirrel hair paintbrushes. So, okay, not quite as original as perhaps it could have been, but they are paintbrushes using natural fibres that would have been available back then. And you can see that this one is my favourite one because it's been broken and I've sellotaped it back together a lot. So we'll probably end up using this paintbrush. Okay, so here we go. First of all, I'm going to mix a little bit of the gall up with some water. We're not going to use a mordant of any such to set it. We're just going to paint it on the fabric because there's a number of reasons for that. But the main one being that because we're embroidering over the outline, it doesn't matter if over time that outline disappears because we want the embroidery to be visible, not the outline. So actually it's a bit of a sneaky way of if the outline disappears over time, maybe that's a good thing. You never know. Okay, so we're going to get on with it. First of all, I'm going to go around the templates to see how they work, and then we'll probably go freehand because I feel much happier doing it that way. Whoa, not bad. Okay, so that was the thicker leather. Let's try this thinner leather down here. Very much aware that the shapes of the leather are affected by how they've been cut. So I've tried to angle angle it when I cut it, so that it goes underneath, so that hopefully the pigment isn't coming out much further than the drawn out line. Very difficult to get a nice smooth line. Not bad. And then we've got the inner arch here. So we've got some bleeding of the here, so it's got a bit too wet. So it just needs to be a bit thicker. Okay, let's try this one at the top. So what I did notice was these have to be really accurately cut. And you will probably notice that because I'm not practiced with cutting leather, that while the shape is there, because it's me, not necessarily 100% happy with how it's being, the precision of how it's being cut. So, but because we're stitching over it, we should be okay, she says. There's the top. The threads are quite thick because they're wool. Well, thick in, it's a comparative term compared to silk, for example. So as you can see, this is quite a skill in itself. So that obviously draws out questions about who actually did the transfer of the design onto the fabric, and we don't know. We have I suppose one name for a possible designer in St Dunstan. He is noted as designing the figures for a stole and maniple for a lady and her retainers to embroider, but that's about it really from documentary sources. That doesn't actually tell you how it was transferred onto the fabric either. So it's another interesting point. Oh, I'm really not happy with that, but we'll see what happens. That one's a bit better. Okay, so this is the one of the larger windows. Oh well. Over around the arch, down the sides. one. And then we've got another one here. Where is it? There it is. Okay. Down sides. Like that. Oh dear. So that's the leather, and we're now going to, and that's worked okay. I think that's worked okay. So we're now going to try with the vellum. See how this works. Okay. Got to be really careful because this is right on an edge. Not bad. Okay, and then, oh, I've lost it. Oh no, I haven't, it's here. Phew. The teeniest, tiniest window. And remember, we're not, I'm not doing this full size, so these would have been bigger on the original. But it's still an interesting experiment to have. That's come out well. Another one. There we go. Not bad. So there's always been a bit of debate as to whether the lines like this were drawn on or were done freehand by the embroiderers. I don't really know, if I'm being honest. I think it could be done either way. So we're going to, so I'm putting some lines on here, and I might leave the ones at the bottom so they, and when we can do those freehand, and that will be an interesting mini experiment within the experiment, I think. Okay, so we're getting there. I've got the figure, I've got the tower. Okay, I'm going to go down this side now. So as you can see, I'm left-handed, so I'm trying, though it's not quite worked out like that, I'm trying to work from right to left, just so we don't get any smudging, or very little smudging. It's not too bad, I suppose, in areas which are going to be covered by embroidery, but there are some areas where you just have an outline, and that could make it a bit more difficult, so we'll see. Oh, that's a bit wobbly, isn't it? We can hide that. Steps down from our tower. This is quite a labour-intensive process and time consuming. I am timing it, so I'll tell you how long it took at the end. Obviously although I do paint onto fabric, I don't do it all the time anymore, so it's probably slowed me down somewhat. So they may have been quicker, but then maybe time wasn't necessarily of the essence. Although most people do think it was probably done under, said that they had a set amount of time in which to do it because it was meant for a special purpose and had to be done for a set date. Well, I say most people, it's an idea that's been suggested. Okay, so we have a tower with lookout, and as I say, I've not done these lines here because we're going to experiment because there were discussions in research as to whether these kind of lines were drawn out or not, so we'll see. I think I'm already in my head thinking, ugh, yeah, I wish they were drawn out, but you never know, we'll see. It's taken me about 25 minutes to do that. But I am getting a feel for using the pigment and for transferring the design over, and within that 25 minutes it's included going around the leather and everything as well, so not too bad, and I've done it in short snippets for you because I didn't want to bore you with it all, but now we'll try working down this border bit here and see how that goes. What I have noticed is that the mixture does tend to get gloopy, so you have to keep mixing small amounts and keep reinvigorating your pigment so that you can keep using it. So that's something that's a little bit different to perhaps if you were using paint. Right, so let's try down here. Oh, I'm not happy with this. But anyway, that's what we've got, so we'll work with it. I'm sure it was like that on the original one as well, she says. And you will notice, and I noticed this when I was lining up the design, that my holding stitches are quite close to the design. That's my own fault. Not much I can do about that, but we can work with it, it's okay. So we're just working on these spirals now. Back up. So, one border stripe. This might not be 100%, we'll see. Hopefully it's okay. Right, so I'm just going to start on this bit now. Oh, this is a big line. I'm going to dash this line, I think, just because I feel more secure doing that. And then we're going to tweak it as we go. One of the good things about the pigment though is you can remove it from the fabric, so if you find there's a horrible mistake and you're really not happy with it, you can actually scratch it off. So I suppose that's a little bit like you see on manuscripts where they describe they're altering something, or there's been a mistake made, and you can see that they've actually scraped that layer off and then they've inserted whatever they want to over the top. So that's quite interesting. Oh dear, look, this is already coming away because I've got my hand over it when I'm working. I'm gonna have to go over that, but that's just proving the point I'm making. Quick, fill that bit back in. There we go. Phew. So you can see that I've actually done the outside now. I thought it would be a bit boring for you to watch me do the whole of the outside. So I've done all of that. What's been really interesting is the fact that you think that these lines are beautiful, and then you look back at them a few minutes later and you can see that they've blurred a little bit. So getting the density of, the ratio of water to pigment has been quite interesting. And also getting all these little blobby bits. This is just fibres from the fabric clogging up the brush. But anyway, that's all done. Hopefully it's accurate. We'll see what it's like when we lift it off. And if it's really bad, well, we'll work on it, we'll work it out. But we're now on the boat, the ship. So I thought you would be interested in seeing that. So we're starting off from my right. I know I'm aware that you're looking at this upside down. So we'll just get that figurehead in. So it's basically more of the same, just working along, trying to get those shapes in. And I know it looks a bit awkward in places, but we've got to remember that I'm actually working at about half size here. So the shapes, some of these rounded shapes would have been easier for the people who originally transferred the design over. They wouldn't be such tight swirls like we're seeing here, but that's okay. The sun's gone in. So even though I've got good light in this room, the sun's gone in and it's just making it a bit awkward. So on these lines, you'll see I'm just doing dashes, which is what I've done on all of these as well. Just because, wow, I just think it's safer for stitching purposes. Is if you go off on an angle, it's you've got more leeway than if it was a block, a solid line. You'll also may notice that I haven't done the more horizontally lines on these two. I thought we could use that as another experiment to see if it was easy just to decide where the lines were going as you were stitching, much the same as in this area here. So we're just, as I say, working on the boat, whoosh. There's lots of nice lines here. Here we go. Oh dear, saying that and I've just gone off. Don't look too closely. It's all going to be covered in stitching, it'll be fine. Oh, there's his other hand. You can see you've got these lumpy bits. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to move on to the rest of this ship and all the figures, and I love these horses. We'll get these horses in place as well. Okay, so we've got most of the boat in now. Just put that bottom of the hull in. It goes along there like that too, I think. It does now. So we're just going to do this last bit. So we've got our figure who's on the tiller and looking after that sail. You'll see that I've done the planking of the ship as dashed lines again. I know that this is all covered with stitching, so it's not really a problem, but it's just, I don't know, I just feel it's a bit safer. You never know. Make this ship watertight. Right. Wow. We're doing okay. So we've now just got the tree to do. Gosh, can you believe it? We're near the end. Wow. Right then. Here we go on our tree. Right, so we're on the last bit, which is exciting. So this is blurred. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do about that, but we'll have to work on it. A bit unfortunate actually, because we're doing so well. And then I've overcompensated here and I've got it too dry. But we'll work on it, we'll figure something out. Interestingly as well, it's actually not used up too much of the solid pigment. So each little, I suppose, ball of pigment that I dropped out of the container has actually gone quite a long way when watered down. I don't know if anyone's ever done any experiments on that sort of thing, but it would be quite interesting to know how far how far this pigment goes. Right, so here we go, 3 hours later, time for the big reveal. Let's see if it is close to the design we came up with and how accurate it is for stitching. Ugh. Oh. Ah! Okay, very professional. Anyway, there we go. And I've just realised I can't actually see it. So hopefully you guys can, and it's looking good. I'll have a look when I edit the video. But that's it, 3 hours work. Now, I don't know if I'm quick or not compared to the original peak workers, but we can use that 3 hours and extrapolate it out to give us an estimate of how long it might have taken to transfer the design. But again, obviously, if they were using templates, that would add to change it a little bit. But we've got our design, so now, next time, yes, we're going to start stitching. Finally, I hear you cry. I'm thinking that too as well. So from now on, we're going to be talking about threads, the order of work. Which of course reminds me, you're probably asking, where am I going to be starting? I don't know. I need to have a think about that. I'm going to look at the original embroideries, the front and the back, to see how they were worked. But obviously this is a montage of elements that we've chosen and put together. So it doesn't tell us how to work the whole scene, but it will tell us how to work the different elements within the design. So that's a starting point, and we'll go from there. So see you next time for stitching.